In Matthew chapter 15, verse 8 and 9. Matthew chapter 15, verse 8 and 9. I'll start there, and then we'll go to Revelations chapter 4. If you have it, would you signify by saying, I have it? This is Matthew chapter 15, verse 8 and 9. These people draw near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching the doctrines, the commandments of men. Teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. I'll read it again. These people, Jesus said, draw near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. Would you now go with me to Revelations chapter 4? Revelations chapter 4. If you have it, say, I have it. Revelations chapter 4, starting at verse 9. Revelations 4 and 9 says this. Whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who sits on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power. For you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created. And the people of God said, Amen. You can have your seats in the presence of the Lord. On the other week, I had the privilege of taking some time out with a good friend of mine, and we went and we shared in a lunch, and it was real good because when you get in the presence of certain people, you can talk about things, you enjoy their presence. It's nothing like spending time with someone that you know or some loved one over good food. It's always, I believe, a good time to do that. While we were there talking, we began to speak about different times that we had opportunity to be in the presence of great men and women, and I recounted to them how not only myself, but also my wife and I, we had opportunity before to be in the presence of, at that time, our presiding bishop, Charles E. Blake, there in Los Angeles, and they brought us in and went up to, at that time, I had never been in a church of that magnitude that they had elevators to go up to the office and had security there. And so we went up into the office, a very large office area, looks like a place, a conference table or a place of dining there. And we saw several, I would say, people of importance that were on television. And so Bishop Blake and Lady May Blake, they brought myself, my wife in, and they treated us so well, and they honored us, and we were honored to be there. And of course, he gave us opportunity to minister there at West Angeles. And I thought about what do you do to show someone at that level of importance that you honor them, that you give them what is due to them. We had another occasion where I'm in Detroit, Michigan, and had opportunity to be now with our present presiding bishop. At that time he wasn't, but we were there, and they took us out to eat. He and Lady Karen took us out. Was so nice and so down to earth. Same applied. We went to the church, the cathedral there. They took us up on their elevator, went in his office there, nice, beautiful area, and he talked to us. And I'm sitting there saying, God, you have given me, not only with those, but I thought about them in particular when I was talking to the gentleman, but even others, how you've given us opportunity to be in the presence of people that deserve honor. The Bible talks about it. Many of you are aware of it. It says that there are people that you ought to give double honor to. When those that you know live the life and they minister to you, they impart things to you, you ought to give them double honor. And I'm talking to the gentleman, and I'm saying these are men that are great in our church organization, and I'm trying to honor them in such a way, but they made me and us feel like we were the special guests, and we were, and while we were talking, God impressed upon my heart, when you think that high of man, how high do you think of me? Where do you put, when you come in my presence, I thought about going in the elevators with them, Sister Perkins, and I said, you know, that was going up to their office, but in order to really get to the level of honoring God, you have to go up at another level spiritually. You have to go, because, yes, everything is God's. He created everything, but you can't treat God like he's mediocre and minimum. You have to go to another level. And I think the writer in particular of Revelations, John says often, he starts out, he was saying, whether in the spirit or not, I had to be at another level, because I began to go into places where everybody can't go. Everybody is not there. And he starts talking about really the inner throne room of God in the book of Revelation. He talks about how when he got a look in there, I don't know how the door was, whether automatic, whether invisible or what, but he says, when I go in there, I saw something that caught my attention. I saw these creatures. I saw these elders, and they were not just talking or sitting around having fun. But when I went into that, when I saw that room, I saw something that happened. He said they were saying something. One writer says, when you read the book of Revelations, not only are they saying something, but they're singing something. Revelation, I think it serves as a glimpse of what it's like when you get to heaven, what it's like when you see the things that go on. We have the privilege here, just as I did with our presiding bishops during that time. I went into an area that everybody didn't have privy to. I went into an area where I had to be led in. And what John says is, let me give you a glimpse of what heaven is like there. Come with me into an area where you have to be ushered into. He says this in the book of Revelations. He uses there about visions. Everybody say visions. He said, you have to go up to another level. You just don't see this on the regular plane. You have to see this in a vision. And I thought about that when John started talking about it. He uses words there in Revelations. He says in verse 11, they begin to say, you are worthy, O Lord and God, to receive glory, to receive honor, to receive power, praise, for you created everything. And so today, in thinking about that the other week, today I want to deal with this subject, the heart that honors God. The heart that honors God. I don't want to bring God down to my level like man. I want to say, God, you're greater than everybody and everything. I want to honor you in such a way that my life represents that. Are you with me? The heart that honors God. Jesus said in the book of Matthew chapter 15, he says there's some hypocrites that go to church, that they say the right stuff with their mouth. They honor me with their lips, but he says their heart is far from me. The heart is not really with me. There's a proverb that's mentioned in I think it's Psalm rather, and he says where a person's heart is, or that person, that's really them. So the things that's in my heart, that's the place that's who I really am, who's in my heart. Some people think that simply means, and this is how it's put there, forgive me for passing over it. It says, as a person thinks in his heart, so is he. You have heard that? But the writer there wasn't saying the way you think here makes your life that way. The writer actually was saying you can say a whole lot of stuff on the outside, but what's really on the inside is the real you. Jesus says there in Matthew 15, he says they draw near to me with their lips. They're saying the right things. They honor me with their lips. They say it with their mouth. But he says the heart is really not in it. You're saying the things and doing the things, but the heart is not in it. And I thought, God, what type of heart do the men and women of God has to have in order to really honor you? Let's go a little deeper for those of you that are growing and maturing in the things of God, because I never want to, verse 8 says, and 9 says, and they worship me in vain. I never want to go through the practice. I never want to live this life, and God is saying, you're playing games. You're missing it. You're not growing. Wouldn't it be a tragedy for us to come to church every Sunday, to read our Bibles, to fast and consecrate, to do those things, and we're playing games? My uncle years ago, Thomas Edwards, he preached a message that gripped my heart. Why would you die? And he was saying, why would you die through the church? Why would you go to church not being real? Why would you go to church, spend time doing praise and worship and saying those things and reading your Bible and being consistent, but you're playing games with me? You're one way at church. You're another way when you're away from church. Why would you die? Jesus says, and in vain they worship me. And so today I want to challenge everybody, not only those of you that are here, but those that are watching. I want to challenge you to get our heart in a place that honors God, so that everything else we do, God will get the glory. Are you with me? There are several things I thought about, because when I saw where Jesus brings up, Christ shows us in his prayer in Matthew chapter 6, verses 9 through 13. Remember, he says, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Not only in heaven, but also here in earth. He says, I want you to make sure you recognize who God is. So when you're saying I honor you, I have to put him in his proper place. Yes, I respected, I revered, I honored those men that God has placed in prominent positions in our organization, but I place no man over God. I place no man over God. I'm going to say it again because somebody's missing it. I place no man over God. I'm Sister Malone. I'm perusing through YouTube one day, and I came up on a particular organization whom I will not name, and this organization had their presiding person over the whole organization in that particular area, and they equated this person to Jesus. They equated this person to Jesus. This is not just a little bitty group. This is a pretty large group, and they were singing songs about, and I hate to give it out, but Elder Ricky, they were saying how we would say, sweet Jesus. You're the little, they were saying, sweet daddy, and they would call out his name. They would say, sweet, sweet, sweet daddy. And I'm not going to call the name, but they, and so they were singing songs, but they were replacing Jesus and God with this person's name. And I said, how dare you bring down, they equated him as being the prophet that God had sent to them for this time, but they equated him with Christ. And I said, oh no, the devil is a liar, because there's nobody in comparison to God and Jesus Christ. There may be other religions that may have said this person was the man of the hour, but no man can compare. I've got to be able to make sure my heart is right when I honor God, and I don't put anybody before him. It's only fair, it's only right that we give honor to man, but I don't put them at the same level. Some of the men that I've been afforded the opportunity here in Houston and even abroad, some great men of God, some mighty men in the gospel. If I were to call their names, you would recognize many of them. I've had the privilege of sitting down with them and eating, breaking bread with them and going to their home and allowing them to just pour into me as a pastor, as a minister. And I've honored them in ways, but I place no man equal with God. God has to be the number one. Everybody say honoring God. I want to make sure my heart is right when I honor God. And I believe Jesus brings out something for a reason in the book of Matthew chapter 15, actually verse 8 and even verse 7. Jesus said, "You hypocrites." In verse 7, he says, you are people who are saying certain things, you're doing certain things, but you're playing games. I never want it to be said that we are people that are playing church. I still believe that the church is the place that if you're sick, you can be healed by the power of God. I still believe that if a person is going through difficulties in their life, whether physically, whether mentally, whether emotionally, whether relationally, whether financially, the church is the place where you can begin to get a word from the Lord, and God will speak to your situation at the church. The church ought to be the place where people begin to get their relationships right. God ought to impress upon them. God ought to be in the worship. That's why we set up in worship. That's why it's important that we sing songs of glory that say, God, we recognize you. We acknowledge you. We give you glory. We give you honor. Nobody deserves it but you. That's why I appreciate and I applaud the music ministry here, because we're not saying I'm climbing up the rough side of the mountain. Yes, the mountain may be rough, but the God that I serve created the mountain. The God that I serve can move the mountain. So I have to put him in a proper place, and I believe that starts in the heart. I believe that starts with who we are. And then when we turn to the book of Revelation chapter 4, John gives us a glimpse of what's going on. And I love this because the songs that you sing, we connect with heaven. They're singing unto him there. We're singing unto him here. We're connecting with them. What is it like for God to hear the praise and the worship of his people? Not only the angels and those angelic hosts that are there in heaven, but also on earth, telling them how mighty and how awesome. We bow before you. We honor you. We praise you. And what could it be like where God is saying, and his word says, I'm seeking such to worship me? Because there's so many people that's doing it in vain. However, John brings out something to us. He says that I want you to recognize what's going on there. And that's really where I want to lay my hat today. Because if I have a heart that really honors God, I have to be able to see an example of that. John brought something out, and I want to show you something. Paul, as a matter of fact, Paul warns in the book of Romans chapter 1, and I dare not go too far with it, but Paul warned us in Romans chapter 1 verse 18 through 32. Paul says, let me show you what happens when you don't keep God in his proper place. Let me show you what goes on when you don't keep God. He says all creation is made by God. All creation is being put and held and sustained by God. But when you don't keep God in his proper place, you will start worshiping the creature instead of the creator. I won't go too far with it, but Paul says when you start doing that, when you don't keep God in his proper place, I'll turn you over to a reprobate mind. You'll start doing things that's so warped and out of character. And I have to warn you, and I hate to go here to this today, but I have to warn you that if we're not careful, even folk that go to church, even folk that come with a tambourine, even folk that show up every Sunday, if you're not careful, you'll start moving yourself into a position and place where you really don't honor God. You really don't show who he is. Well, Pastor, how do you do that? Let me just touch this and I'll come back. One way you do that is when you give more respect to your job than you give to God's house. That's all I needed was one. When you show more respect to the boss and to what you do on the job, then you show respect to God and what you do in the church. All right, I'm gonna keep pulling because y'all act like you didn't hear me. When I'm always on time to work, but when I'm always preparing myself ahead of time to present myself to work, but I never prepare myself ahead of time to present myself to God. I'm careful of what I say at work because they tell you, don't say this, don't talk about that, don't do that. I'm careful of how I present myself among people, but I'm not careful. All I'm simply saying is you got to have a heart to worship. You got to have a heart to honor. So I will not treat man or man's work more than I treat God. One person, I hadn't went down your road yet, so I'm going to go down there now. One of the things that I remember a person said, he said, who's in your life that you give more attention to? And so I thought about it. I said, well, because he started listing things. He said, you give more attention to your spouse. Okay. You give more attention to your children, your grandchildren. You give more attention to your family members, your friend. He said, you may even give more attention to yourself. But if you give more attention to anything or anyone else than you give God, then something is wrong. What he was saying was, even if I put the attention on me, all right, I'll go here. Even if I'm making sure I look good, but don't make sure he looks good through me, something is wrong. I've got to honor God in a way that my heart says this. So Paul says in Romans 1, check out Romans 1, 18 through 32. Jesus says in Matthew 6, 9 through 13, how we're to keep him in his proper place. And then, of course, as a matter of fact, I ought to make you, well, you got your Bibles. Go to Matthew chapter 15. Matthew chapter 15. Because we were there just a moment ago, and I want to revisit it to make sure you're with me. Matthew chapter 15. Notice what he says, because most people miss the fact that he's really trying to bring out something to us. He says, yes, you may come into the place. Yes, you may come into the presence. Yes, you may look the part and do the things. But really, he starts at verse 7, and Matthew 15 and 7 says, hypocrites. Hypocrites. Now, he didn't just make this up because he reminds them, Isaiah told this through prophecy in the book of Isaiah. And he says, hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy about you, saying, these people draw near. They come to me with their mouth. Oh, Lord, I praise you. Oh, Lord, I worship you. He says, they honor me with their lips. They know what to say. They know how to say it. But he says, but their heart. Everybody say the heart. He uses a word that I was honestly challenged with. Can I just elaborate on it? He says, but their heart is far from me. Their heart is far from me. The other day I'm driving along and I made a call while I'm driving, and my car has, it picks up the smartphone, and you can talk. You don't have to have the phone in your hand. You know all that hands-free stuff. And so I'm talking on the phone, and the person was saying, I can't really hear you. I can't hear you. Now, I heard what they're saying, and so I started talking louder to hear. And so they were still having problems, and I'm saying, okay, is it my phone, or do I need to turn the volume up here? They can't really hear me. And so I said, well, if there's a problem with it, I've got to get this checked out, because I don't want to have to hold the phone and talk and make adjustments like that. And so I was going to take the car to the dealership and have them, is there something y'all need to fix to get this right, so that I can be driving along and they hear me clearly. And so while I was thinking of it, something came to my mind. It was simply that understand there's a big distance between where they are and where you are. And if the microphone isn't right, it's almost like the lady kept saying, I can't hear you. I'm saying the right stuff. I'm saying it loud, but they can't. God is saying, you're doing a lot of stuff in vain because you're really not close to me. You're far from me. I can't hear what you're saying because your heart is really not there. He said, I need you to check yourself because you're worshiping me in vain. And we don't want to be a people. We don't want to be a church. We don't want to say that we went and spent all of this time doing all of what we do, and God is saying, you did all of that and it was in vain because your heart wasn't there. Then John brings out something to us, and I want to give you this in the last few moments, some ways that we should honor God, some ways that we should honor God, because if I really want a heart that honors God, I need to know what are the ways. There's one way that you can honor God, and that's in worship. Everybody say worship. That's in worship. Worship, most people think I only worship when I come to church. But actually, that's a collectiveness of us worshiping together. Worship is every day. Worship is when you wake up in the morning, you acknowledge who he is, what he has done, and how great he is. That's worship. Everybody say worship. I honor God by worshiping him. I give nobody else that credit. Nobody else deserves that. I may give, and some people, it's almost, they're not worshiping, they're tipping God. They're tipping God. Based on what he's done for us, I'll give him a little something. You know when you go to the restaurant, and how many of you have been to a restaurant and they have great service? They're very attentive. And then I've been to restaurants where I had to ask somebody else, did they leave? Did they go on break? What happened? All I needed was a little water. My wife and I, we went to, it's been a while now, we went to a particular place, and the servers there, the waiters there, the waitresses there, they were so attentive to us. As a matter of fact, I believe it was something that the restaurant, they must have gotten with them way ahead of time because everybody was attentive. Not only was our waiter, he would stand over and I noticed he's looking. When my water got a little, he came over and poured. I dropped something. I didn't even notice it. It may have been my napkin on there. And one of the other waiters that was coming, he came by, and he wasn't my waiter. He came by and said, I'll get you another one. I got you covered. Don't worry about it. A little later on, the waiter came back, and he saw where I don't eat a lot of bread, but at that time I was eating. And so there were crumbs on the table, and this guy came by with a special, some kind of tool, and he said, let me get this out your way. I don't want you. I said, my God, what? Now when I got the bill, I understood where I was. But at the end of our dining there, I wanted to show him how appreciative I was with his service. And so at normal, you give 15, 18, or 20%, but I went over that. I wanted to let him know I appreciate, because you don't get this everywhere. Some people treat God that way. Based on how he served you is how you going to tip him. Now, I was going to use tip there, but tips for most places start at 15%. Some folk have a problem giving God 10. All right, I'll move on. We don't even tip him, but if you really want to know with worship, you say, God, it's a lifestyle. I'm going to honor you in everything that I do. It's my lifestyle. Everybody say worship. Another way you should honor God is in your walk. That's so if I'm at work, I ought to live godly. I ought to be holy. If I'm at home, I ought to be godly. I ought to be holy. If I'm out with family or friends or shopping, they ought not say at work, now who is that? Is that Reverend, gentleman, years ago, we was at a place. I went to a service, a celebration of life to a service, and some of our co-workers were there because we were going to show support. And so they called a person's name we worked with. And all of us started looking. First, we were surprised they went to church. Secondly, they placed a title on their name, Reverend. And I said to myself, oh, heavens no. This is not the same person that I saw. Let me give you an example. A young lady that I used to work with there, she said to me, took me aside, she said, now, I can believe, they say that you are a preacher, and I can believe it because of the way you carry yourself and because of the way you act. She said, but that rascal. And so she said, do you know he's married and he's been trying to hit on me ever since he got, all right. My walk ought to be the same at work, at home, and at church. If I really want to know how to honor God, if I really want to honor God with my heart, there ought to be a consistency, not only in my worship, but in my walk. Let me give you these last one. If you want to honor God, if you really want to have a heart to honor God, we ought to honor him with our time. Honor God with our time. I know of people, and not you all because you're here, and many that are watching, they may have challenges because they may not be able to be at church, but some people have a problem honoring God with their time. They're at work 3 to 5 days a week, and they have a problem giving God one day. All right. A little quiet there. You can invite them at the spur of the moment to go out or to go party or go to the club or go to the store, to a restaurant. But if you don't tell them in enough time to go to church, I ain't prepared. I don't have nothing to wear. You should have called me earlier. And I'm thinking, how do you honor God if you don't give him some time? How do you honor God if his coming into his house with his people are always a thought away from? Church is always, and I get messed with, especially with my family, but oftentimes I enjoy church because that's my time of worship. Now, it doesn't mean that I have to be in church 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but I'm simply saying because I honor God with my time, I recognize I want to go to church. On yesterday evening, went to two different services on yesterday. One to celebrate the life of a young man's father that I know of, and then the other one was an installation, and it had to take a little driving, I'll confess. But it wasn't a problem because when they were talking about we're going to church, I don't have a problem giving God time. You don't have to worry about it. I'm not one of those that would watch. And isn't it something today? Now, this is today, but yesteryear, we would be in church for 3 and 4 hours. Yeah, y'all playing now. Y'all rushing. Pastor, church has already been an hour now. And folk, but there was a time. I could go back with you. I have family in the room. They could, when in my grandparents' town, they would take the lunch in the trunk of the car because we wasn't coming home. No, after Sunday school and after service, you just go right out to the trunk and they would have the food there and you eat because we were going right back in. It was hours. I didn't know what it would be like to be in comfortable chairs and only an hour and a half, at the most hour 45 minutes in church. But now people start looking around. God forbid, they used to try to give you a signal rattling the keys. I thought about this is years ago, a preacher, I don't know what the person was doing. I don't know if they were going to something, but he heard some keys rattling. And this preacher said over the pulpit, if you got to go ahead and go, but don't be sitting here rattling your keys. that caught my attention immediately, and this was a fairly sized ministry. Immediately, the usher and the greeter started looking. But I'm simply saying, if you really want to honor God, honor Him with your time. Tell Him, I'm not going to rush through worship. I'm not going to rush through giving you glory. I'm going to honor you. Whatever you want to do, you have time to do. Everybody say your time. Secondly, if you really want to honor God, you should honor Him also with your talents. What is it that God has blessed you with? That you ought to, He's gifted you with abilities that you ought to say, God, I'm going to give it back to you in service of helping somebody else. The talent that you have given me, if I'm good at it, if I can play the drums, if I can play the keyboard, if I can sing, if I can serve, if I can smile, I want to honor you with my talent. I want somebody to see who you are with the gifts and the abilities you've given. I'm not going to keep it to myself. Told a gentleman I met one day, I told this gentleman, I asked him, you all know I'm a preacher, and so I'm speaking to him, and at that particular time, we didn't have, and I'll share with you, we have some cards to just help you not only invite, but to share things with Christ. And so I'm talking to this gentleman, and he said, I go to church here, and you know, my family and all, and so I had to go to the next place. And so this is honoring with your talent. So I said, are you involved in church? He said, no, I just show up. I said, I mean, we need strong men at the church. I mean, we need to make sure if it's no more than on the outside, there's a period of time where, brother, you might want to walk out and make sure everything is all right in the parking lot because thieves still steal. I said, is there areas in the church where they could use brothers that could go by, now I'm talking about honoring with your talents, that they may be able to go by and say, is everything good, everything all right? Is everything, I thought about Deacon Perkins, he's a workaholic. He's one that works, but he'll often call, if there's a challenge with the church, Pastor, I'll be by there on my off day. I'm going to make sure everything is right. Thought about Brother Cartwright, when the water pipes burst on the outside, and Brother Cartwright called me and said, Pastor, I just wanted to let you know that this happened, but don't worry about it. I got it. I went up and paid for whatever the stuff was to make sure it's right. I'm saying that because some people don't, that you have talents, but you're saying, God, I don't really know what I need to do and what can I do. If you don't know what your talent is, get busy doing something in church and you may find out what your talent is. Because I want to honor God through my heart, and if the heart ain't right, then nothing. My wife, and she does something. First lady of the church does something Sunday mornings. We're normally the first ones here, and so we get here early. And I'm just one. I'll confess, Sister Malone. I'm just one. I don't want the people of God to come into the house of God and it's not prepared. Are y'all with me? And so there's certain things that she constantly does, and those that come in, they're sanitizing everything, doorknobs and the chairs. They're sanitizing the restrooms, the ladies' and men's room. They're sanitizing. We're making sure things are prepared for the people of God. We're ensuring that when you come, all I'm simply saying is, whatever your talent is, if you want to honor God, if it's from the heart, you'll say, I'll find a place where I can use my talents. I'll find a place where I can give back to God and God's people the abilities and the gifts that He's given me. There's another area where you can honor God. That's with your treasure. Now, I know most people don't like talking about money, especially because they think the church already asked for too much money. It's ironic that they never say that about stores, but anyway. You honor God, everybody say, with your treasures. That means I'm going to give back to God what He's allowed me and blessed me with the ability to make. The services that I give, I had a brother tell me, he said, man, so you really do give to church every week? I said, yeah. He said, and you really do give 10% to church every week? I said, well, I give 10% on whatever the increase is that comes into my life, because I see the principle that's set here and the mandate that God is giving in tithe and offering. I said, it works. I'm a witness. It works. I wanted him to understand, I don't just keep treasure to myself. I don't just say, God, give me, bless me, bless me, bless me. And I'm not saying I honor you with my treasure. Oh, no. I'm saying, God, you continue to bless me. I'm going to honor you with what you have given me. Are y'all with me? Y'all may have heard this before. Some people say it's hard for God to bless you because your hands are like this. You're so busy holding your treasure that God can't put nothing else in it. I asked God years ago, and I'll move past that because I know most people don't like talking about giving material things, but I asked God years ago, and many of you have heard me say it, I wanted to be able to always give at a certain amount. Now, this is not for you. I'm talking about me. I'm not talking about tithe and offering because I give that, but I'm talking about that of when I'm in services. I'm saying, God, I want to be able to give at a certain amount. I can go above that, but if I want it at any time, and that was years ago. I'll confess to you, that was years ago. And so what he told me was, he said, well, when you're consistent at your giving of tithe and offering, and you begin to give liberally from the heart like that, start looking for me to give you wisdom, knowledge, and understanding in your finances so you can rearrange some things where you'll have that ability. What I thought he was going to say was, I'm going to bless you with a whole lot more, and you'll be able to give a whole lot more. He said, I'm going to bless you with some understanding of where you are so that you can rearrange. How many folk rearrange things in their finances so that they can be a blessing to the things of God? Now, I'm not saying that you need to sell your house. They did all right. I'm not saying that you need, all I'm saying is there ought to be some times where you honor God with your treasure, where you say, God, no matter where I am. On the other day, and I'm not one to publicize. I'm not one to publicize. Don't even like it. And I guess I'm messing up right here, Elder Ricky. I'm not one to publicize always. I don't like Reverend so-and-so gave. And brother so-and-so is giving. Reverend Superintendent this and this. And you ain't got to, no, I give with integrity. So whether you call my name or not, if I planned on giving it, I'm going to give it. If I didn't plan on giving it, you can call my name all you want to. It's in my pocket. Sister Castle and I are the only ones that write in our checkbook. And so we're not going to allow you to. But I wasn't trying. So when I asked God that, I wasn't trying to say, God, I want to showboat and be able to give this amount. No, I was saying, God, I really love you, and I really want the work to go. I want to honor you with my treasure. Bless me to a place where I will always be able to give at this level. God has proven himself. He's honored my desire in being able to give at that level every time. Let me move on. I know you're ready for me to stop, but I only have two more. If you really want to honor God with your service. Everybody say honor God. Honor God with your service. The difference in that and talent is your talent is something you may have the ability to do well, and you just want to be able to bless God with that. I know of some that are talented in accounting, some that are talented in, you can honor him with that. But then with your service, you're saying, God, wherever you need me, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to serve. I'm willing to serve. I'm with, on yesterday, I'm with Bishop Green at an installation service, and because he is my superior in the organization as a bishop, I'm willing to serve. Now, he has adjutants, and they're there making sure that whatever he needs, he has it at his present, because they want to make sure the man of God is prepared. Don't have to do extra things. And so I'm there, and so I often, while I'm sitting by him, Sister Petrie, I would say, do you need anything? Is everything? He'd grab me and say, man, I'm all right. I'm good. I want to make sure the man, because I want him to know I don't mind serving you, because that's a way of even preparing a heart of service. You remember the story of Jesus putting on, wrapping the towel around him and getting down and washing the disciples' feet. saying I'm not too high to serve you, but there are many people in the church feel they're too high to serve others. A preacher once said, I won't call his name because many of you may know him. He once said, now there's some ordinance I'll do. I'll baptize. I'll take communion. But that foot washing stuff, I ain't washing these folk nasty feet. What he was really saying to me is, I'm not willing to humble myself and serve others. Because the higher you go, you ought to be willing to serve in whatever manner. I'm not saying that you got to bathe folk feet. We've done it here where we've shown as a superintendent those pastors that were a part of the district. I wanted them to know I submit myself to serving you, and I'm not too high. And so we made preparation where we actually wash their feet because I'm a servant of the Lord. You ought to find a place, if you really want to honor God, you ought to be willing to serve. And then this is my last part. If you really want to honor God, have a heart to honor God, you ought to really have a sacrifice for God. Sacrifice. Everybody say sacrifice. Now that's my last part because this is the challenge. Sacrifice is I'm willing to go beyond and above what I originally thought I would be doing. Everybody say sacrifice. It's like this. Have you ever worked on a job where they told you something came up and we need you to stay a little longer? Sacrifice. Have you ever been in, I had a gentleman, and this blessed me. I was at a service in Oklahoma, and I'm at that service, and this gentleman got up and said, you know what? We need, everybody say sacrifice. He said, we need a certain amount to meet the budget of the week. And he said, this preacher has been nice. He said, but I know it's in the room. I know it's in the room. You've given, but it's in the room. We need to make sure the budget is met. Everybody say sacrifice. That's just an example. And he said, this is the amount we needed. I'll tell you who it was that made a sacrifice. John P. Key, y'all know the singer? He's in the audience. And the gentleman said, this is the amount we need. John P. Key said, I'll give 10,000. He had already given, but he made a. Now I'm not saying, don't worry. I'm not getting ready to receive an offering. But I am saying, when you really want to honor God from the heart, it's not grudgingly. It's not mad. You're not upset when you say, what do I need to do to sacrifice? Sacrifice. There was a preacher that I knew of, Sister Petrie, and he said, I'm asking you all to go with me because this particular preacher, this particular church, they were going through some challenges. This particular church was going through some challenges. And he said, I'm going to ask you all, while I'm not on program to speak, I'm going to ask you all to do like they did in the book of Acts. He said, I'm going to ask you all that would go with me, and I'm going to ask you to make a sacrifice, and let's be a blessing to them financially because they're going through some things they're not able to handle. And so just so happened, I was there at that service, and he said, all of those that came with me today, I'm going to ask you to make a sacrifice. Would you all be willing to just share $100? Now, they had already given at their local church. But he said, I'm simply asking, would you help me be a blessing to this other church that's going through some financial difficulties? Would you sacrifice? And it blew my mind how many of those people begin to jump up. Jump up. Jump. See, for somebody, $100 ain't a sacrifice. But after you've given tithe and offering, and then somebody say, let's be a blessing, you say, I'm in. If you really want to honor God from your heart, it ought not be a fuss or a fight or grudging to say, God, I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm willing to do something over and above what you initially asked. One day, Sister Narcisse, I'm getting some things done to one of my cars. I'm getting some things done, and a gentleman told me, he said, there's a particular, I don't know what it's called, Brother Brandon, the specifics of, but I like cars clean. Y'all know me well enough to know. I like cars clean. My daughters were messing with me today talking about, oh, you can drink in your car, but we can't. That's right, because I clean mine. Yeah. I like cars clean. So this gentleman told me about something. It's not wax. It's not a buffing. It's a ceramic something that you do to your car, and oh God, it keeps a shine like never before. And so I said, I'm going to check that out. Everybody say sacrifice. I'm going to check that out. And so I checked it out at one place. I said, this guy told me about a ceramic something. How much would that be? He said, oh, yes, we do that. Man, your car would look like water, like glass. I said, oh, that's nice. It's nice. Oh, yes. This is honoring with the heart now. And so I said, all right, how much would that be? He said, oh, man, we can get that done for $1,800. I said, I'm not quite ready to make that sacrifice. Went to another place, and I'm comparing, getting estimates, and went to another place. He said, yeah, we do that. The cost that we do for this particular size car is only $695. I said, no, that's still too much to sacrifice. Just so happened, I'm talking to someone that they are like I am. They are like I am, and they are very particular about their automobile. They want it clean and all of that. And so I'm talking to them, and they say, well, I do this. I think it's called ceramic cleaning or something. I do those. I do it for myself. Make sure. And I said, man, that's how you keep that car. Wow, it looks spotless all the time. Where when it rains, it just drips off. And so I was like, wow. I said, well, how much would you charge to do someone else's car? He said, because I see you always have your car clean, you take care of those things. I tell you what, I'm willing to do yours for $250. I said, what? I said, Lord, you knew the sacrifice that I was willing to make for that. Now, why did I bring that? Because there was an amount that I wasn't willing to sacrifice. Two of them. There was an amount, even it was above, that I was willing to sacrifice. But when I start talking about honoring God from my heart, there is no amount that I'm not willing to sacrifice to him. I want him to know I honor you with all of my heart. Whatever you tell me to give, I'm willing to give. If it's my servants, my service, if it's my talent, if it's my time, if it's my talents, my treasures, whatever it is, I'm willing to do it because I honor you from the heart. Today I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to begin to honor God from the heart. I don't want us to be hypocrites and do the Sunday morning, the religious rhetoric without the religious heart. To say, God, I honor you in all that I have. I don't just lift my hands, I lift my life. I don't just say it with my lips, but I prove it in my lifestyle. I honor you from my heart. And while every head is bowed, every eye is closed. Every head is bowed, every eye is closed. Amen.